Hello everyone, happy Christmas 2022 and happy New Year as well. We hope you're all well. We're generally in good health, but we'll mention a couple of health things later. So for us, 2022 has been an eventful year, and reflecting how this year's been somewhat all over the place, this message is equally here, there, everywhere. Let's start with the little people. Emma is a typical 5-year-old. She's got that curiosity about the world. She likes to help and get involved, especially if that's making cakes or biscuits or smoothies. She loves to draw, read, and use her imagination. She loves jokes and wordplay, including new words to all songs. So I played for her one day the old Village People song. And there's a town near us called Valenciennes. One day Emma just started singing Valenciennes. That's the kind of thing that she does all the time. She's also into pretty clothes, makeup, Paw Patrol, lots and lots of Paw Patrol, and really enjoys going to playgrounds and on carousels. So you might remember that she was previously homeschooled here in France, but she started school in January. We initially started homeschooling here in France because, with her being bilingual, English-Russian, we wanted to make sure that she completely got the links between the sounds and the letters, particularly with French and its tendency to drop letters. And once she got that, we were really keen for her to bolster the social network. So obviously she goes to school in France, and that means that everything there is in French. Her passive knowledge is clearly developing. It's really, really good. She knows lots of words, but actually producing it in terms of speaking, answering or responding, that's at the moment still a little bit different. Exceptions are maybe nursery rhymes. She sings French nursery rhymes. And typical 5-year-old, if it's related to the toilet, well, you know, or jokes about people having done something in their pants. Finn is now 19 months old, so he likes copying what we do, trying to help. At the moment, that is putting everything into the bin or into the washing machine, whether it needs to go in the bin or the washing machine or not. In terms of his nature, he's quite mischievous and quite cheeky, and you've got the impression that he knows it because he'll throw something that it's not supposed to throw, but it'll be at the same time. It's a bit like having Beavis and Butthead in a 19-month-old version. He's a bit of a gourmand, demands the finest food no matter what, quite curious about different things, and yesterday he was happily chomping on a Scotch bonnet chili pepper. No complaints. Finn, this year, we found out, is deaf. In short, he's got medium deafness, and what that means is that for most frequencies, he only starts hearing when it's about 50 decibels and louder. He can hear bass frequencies, the low frequencies, and the high treble frequencies, and he can hear those essentially normally. But the mid-range frequencies, which is what a lot of sounds and conversation is, that he can't hear. And so that's the same in both ears. We've now got him hearing aids, and those are designed to be very specific. They're being programmed to be very exact to his needs for each ear. I'll mention a little bit more about this later. So as you can imagine, in the circumstances, Finn's language development is well behind. He's having speech therapy to aid that process. Perhaps the stereotype that sometimes if someone's blind or deaf, that other aspects of their life compensate for that. And we think that's the case with Finn, that he's far more advanced in terms of his physical development. So running, climbing, the way he plays with a football, his manual dexterity, all well advanced. So we've had some little health issues this year, nothing major, but there's an in-joke in the family because Emma has a friend at school called Ugo, and Ugo is our patient zero. The conversation always begins like this: Ugo had a cough yesterday, but he wasn't at school today. That's how we got COVID. Ugo had spots, but he's not at school today. That's how he got chickenpox. And this has been throughout the whole year. So yeah, we really should have bought Emma a barge pole for Christmas. I'm currently in the process of getting my varicose veins done. They wouldn't do them in the UK because they weren't ulcerated or they weren't painful. They were quite swollen though. The thing of them being left is that this now means 3 operations of laser treatment as opposed to just blocking them somehow. I've had 2 done so far, and that's been done within the last 3 or 4 weeks, and so they're still a little bit sore, but you know, no complaints. Between my legs and Finn's speech therapy, that's a lot of appointments at the moment, so we've been really, really busy running around everywhere. Part of the appointments for Finn are about ruling out any other serious illnesses related to deafness. So checking his kidneys, his heart, his eyes, and he's started having genetic testing. So this is just a process of ruling things out. And the good news so far is there is no signs of any other underlying illness causing the deafness. To keep up with the tradition of mentioning Lily's parents in these letters, yep, they are well, but with certain events this year, they haven't visited. It's been impossible to get visas. Theoretically available, practically not. So that means it is March 2020 since they were last here, or last visiting us. Holidays this year were trips to the UK and Germany. The UK generally was more business than pleasure, but in March we did finally get over for Emma's birthday and to take her to Peppa Pig World down near Southampton. We really wanted to get that done because it was something that she had wanted for a long time, but we also knew it was something that she was going to grow out of. If anyone is around that kind of area and has young children to take, or if you're just a big kid yourself, well worth a visit. We had 10 days in Germany, but we had to split it 5 days and 5 days because of appointments. So we have 5 days in Aachen and 5 days in a little town called Chevelm. We enjoyed the historical sites, the old towns. I sneaked in a couple of football matches and not really available in France, so we took full advantage of the vegan junk food. The big news for us is that we're set to leave France sometime next year. In my own mind, there are two versions of the country. There is the holiday France. That's the places to visit, the amazing cathedrals, towns with the large open plan squares, the fortified towns, the nature. It's the culture, it's the museums, the galleries, it's the people. For me, it's the language, or even it's the vibe you get from the place. We love it. We love the little town we live in. It's small, quiet, safe, and part of it is in a nature reserve, so it's just lovely, clean and green, and the house is fab. Particularly love the garden. The other France is the living here France, the day-to-day grind, and that's been problematic, the health system and the bureaucracy in particular. In terms of health, we've had two really serious problems in the 2 years while we've been here, and yet nothing like this in a lifetime of living elsewhere. One is that it took 6 to 7 months longer than it should have done to get Finn diagnosed with deafness. And that was partly because the doctors were initially telling us that despite incomplete tests, it looked like he was okay in one ear but borderline deaf in the other. So we were left with no worries. And when the doctor said, we'll get back to you, we weren't really pressing for this. A few months later, we got back in touch and went, what's happening? And all of a sudden, there's a mad panic. 2 consultations arranged within a week. June, we found out he's deaf. And then when we were getting the documents off the doctor, which is possible in France and quite easy because it's not like it's all part of the overarching NHS, you have greater choice in where you go from one doctor to the next, so you can take these documents with you. So what we found out when we read these documents was that the doctor had written the previous November, that's about 6-7 months earlier, that he had a threshold for hearing around 50 decibels. In other words, medium deafness. But we were told something different. To put it mildly, we're not too happy about that. The other issue is with Lily's obstetrician when she was pregnant with Finn. Because of medical history, she wanted a caesarean and to avoid induction. But the doctor just took Lily as too posh to push and quoted stats about UK women wanting caesareans. Permanent persuasion. Many women are afraid to try, but you need an induction but don't want one. Well, if he gets bigger, I might break bones getting him out. That's not really a nice thing to be saying. Result, Lily and Finn nearly died, and Finn lacked oxygen. We're lucky that there was no actual brain damage from the lack of oxygen. He's had the tests. He had the tests at the hospital, and they were all okay. But nevertheless, we came within a whisker of a serious tragedy or a long-lasting impact of that. As mentioned last year, admin, bureaucracy here continues to be a nightmare. Lost forms, inefficiency, errors. Just like the health, never had so many problems in a lifetime, let alone within 2 years. If you're self-employed, this is just eating up so much time. We don't need it. You don't need to be giving up that time for lost forms, their mistakes. Perhaps the biggest example of something that's happened recently is, well, do you remember Emma being homeschooled? And we said that we sent her earlier this year. We recently got a letter and a form to fill in saying there is no record of her being at school. She has had no home education inspection. You have to explain or get a school to sign the form if we have made a mistake. We were a little late getting it back, and this is in fact the first time we've been late with them, but the form arrived 2 days before holidays, we had loads of appointments, and the school was slow getting it back. We got a second letter, which is, we've had no form from you, you have a ban on homeschooling for this year and next, you have 15 days to get her into school, or you risk 6 months in prison and a €7,500 fine. Before you say to yourself, it'll work itself out, we don't have confidence in that because we've had dealings with another organisation and we've paid out hundreds of euros in fines because of their mistakes and their inflexibility and their unwillingness to actually investigate the situation properly. So for us, we feel that nothing is settled here. They were happy enough a year ago to say, yeah, we understand she's off to school. A year later, they're threatening to fine us and send us to prison. So nothing's settled here. Anything that you do get settled, it's like pulling the rug from under your feet, or it comes back to bite you on the backside. That is our experience of bureaucracy in France. Another factor is Ukraine, given our Russian connections. To state the obvious, we are very much against what has happened in Ukraine, and it is a complete and utter tragedy and a source of deserved international shame and sanctions for Russia. So while making no comparisons to the suffering of Ukrainians, we have nevertheless had some problems generated for us personally because of that. And that for us is that we've lost a lot of clients, that we had used our Russian connections to build up a client base of Russians. That's now finished, more or less because there is no way of making the payments. Also here, we had previously had plans to produce learning materials for Russians, but as Lily phrased it, you can't help but view Russians through the prism of war. We've had some people that we know, both inside and outside of Russia, who are completely pro-war, and you would never, ever have expected it. And we feel very, very uncomfortable about dealing with these people who are so openly pro, and we just feel really, really uncomfortable with that. So in a sense, business-wise, we are back to more or less square one, and it's the big question, is this where we want to be back to square one? Not really. We see the contrast between how we got here and how everything aligned, that we did it between lockdowns. We were repeatedly told by estate agents it was impossible. We didn't have this, that, or the other. And we know that someone dropped out, which meant that we were able to get this house. And that's how we were able to make the move. Here, it just seems the other way around, that nothing runs smoothly, nothing aligns, nothing falls into place. I think it just means that we are really ready for a change. We've had some wonderful experiences here. It is a great place. We do genuinely love it. And I think that adds to the frustration, but it's just not right that we stay here. It's not impossible, but there would have to be a substantial change. So we're leaving France. Where next? And that is a likely return to the UK. Perhaps, given some of the things that have gone wrong in France, a reset in a familiar location would be useful for us. And I think, particularly for Finn, speech therapy in English is very, very useful. And there are just more opportunities for his development in particular. I remember taking Emma to some of the church groups and children's groups in the mornings and just seeing how she developed her language and social skills through that. We feel that Finn would very much benefit from the same, particularly in the circumstances. Christmas has already passed. It was just a quiet day for the four of us at home, relaxing, and with my legs, we went for the relatively easy option. We had nut roast and then everything else, the potatoes, the veg, well, except for the sprouts, came out of tins or packets. Not a day spent cooking and cleaning up afterwards, and all the better for it. New Year's Eve represents a bit of a dilemma for us because we have typically had a very Russian-style celebration. The meal with all the different kinds of salads, all carefully laid out that take hours to produce, the classic Soviet films, the the president's speech, the cheesy New Year's show called Goluboy Огонек. We want to avoid it and change it because of the obvious. But some of these things become interesting in their own right. The president's speech sets the tone for the year, so that is a newsworthy event and of interest. There's a curiosity about the entertainment show. How targeted will the jokes be this year? Will they touch on it or will they avoid it? Whatever happens, pretty much like Christmas, we are going to take it easier, and the plan is just to shove a load of stuff in the oven. We've got a load of frozen pizzas already in, some chips to stick in the oven as well, and we'll slice up some veggies, no doubt. Much simpler this year instead of spending hours peeling veg and preparing the complex multi-layered salads. However you have spent or will spend the festive season, I hope you've enjoyed it and had the opportunity to spend time with loved ones. And I hope that Christmas spirit carries over into the new year for you. I think this year we probably have two particular wishes on our mind that we'd like to say to you, and that is we wish you all the very, very best of health, and at the risk of sounding like a Miss World contestant, world peace. I think those are both something that form the basis for a lot of other wishes to actually be able to happen. If I haven't mentioned what you're also wishing for, I hope that comes true too. Take care, and if you get the opportunity, we have sent out contact details, so we would love to hear from you. Take care.